Hey guys, it's Danny. Today it is time for a brand new Q&A episode. I have brand new questions to answer, so I'm gonna try to go through them as fast as possible, but I might split them in two videos because I have a whole lot of questions that you guys left in the comment section of these videos and in other videos. So let's start. But before we do that, this episode, together with this entire series, is of course sponsored by rePotme.com, who offers you everything you could possibly need to properly take care of your orchids. From pots to potting mixes, fertilizers, accessories, even grow lights, and everything in between. And not only for orchids, but also for other houseplants as well, such as cacti and succulents. So I will share with you down below the products that I personally enjoy the most, and I think you will enjoy as well. I've been using them for many years, and I will also of course link you to their website down below in the description. Feel free to check them out at any time. Spoilers, hold on. I got the lights. Yay, they were out of stock. They're fairly new and they were out of stock for quite a bit. They sold and now they're in stock again, and rePotme so graciously sent me 2 of them to try out, and I will do the unboxing and presentation for them today, like after I do this video. I kept them in their box, although I was super excited to open them. Anyway, I'm a massive user of grow lights in various different forms, so I'm very excited about them. But with that said, you can find them and the grow lights and everything linked down below in the description and in the pinned comment as always. And with that said, let us start. Let's start with a comment sent in by Loris Lane. Hi Danny, thanks for a great video again. Thank you for watching. Talking about Dendrobium nobilis, how to get plump pseudobulbs. All the new ones mine got all stayed quite thin. I don't know probably what I'm doing wrong. Well, honestly, not all Dendrobium nobilis have very plump pseudobulbs. Like what was the name? Comet King that I used to have many years ago. It was the type that had very plump pseudobulbs. But then I had one called Angel. I don't remember. Oh gosh, it was a long time ago. That one, it was a whitish one. Didn't have very plump pseudobulbs. It was more on the thin side, but it performed and bloomed absolutely great. So one, it could be the variety of Dendrobium nobile that you have that simply stays on the thin side, and if it's performing well, that's absolutely fine. If it's blooming, if it's growing luscious, you don't necessarily need very plump pseudobulbs. But if you have one of those Dendrobiums that needs to have plumper pseudobulbs, well, wait for them to fully mature, because as they grow, they are very thin. And then if they are indeed mature, maybe it's a feeding issue. They usually require quite a bit of feeding in the growing season, and then when they go into their dormancy, no more feeding. But I doubt that it's the issue. I'm betting more that it's just one of those varieties which doesn't get plump canes, and it's absolutely fine as long as it blooms great and it has very beautiful foliage and roots are good. Everything should be okay. I don't think I've ever had like problems with Dendrobium nobilis having too thin canes. It's just about the variety, and I'm betting that is the issue, quote unquote, as well. It's not an issue. Right, next question comes from Terry. It's a bit of a long comment, so I'm gonna make a bit of a resume. They have 2 Phalaenopsis orchids, and they discovered they don't actually have enough light for them, so they purchased a grow light. And the question is, which setting should I have the light on? It has 4 settings: 100%, 75%, 50%, and 25%. When I first turned it on, I had it on 100% for a few hours, and it caused the leaf on each orchid to curve downwards, the light, dramatically, and they really need to come back down. I don't know how to accomplish this, or if it is even possible at this point. I don't know if I should concentrate on the new growth, on the growth stage of the plants, or try to induce it to spike. Either, as of right now, neither plant has a spike started. I am in the US, Illinois, mid-central of the state. It's currently winter here. Help, please. Oh my goodness. I'm not sure I understand correctly what happened to the leaves. They curled downwards. Right, so first of all, it really depends on the grow light. Now, one of the biggest mistakes that I saw people do, and actually people were like kind of suggesting it in the comments when I got my Barinas, was that they were purchasing those very big, very powerful and expensive grow lights, which, don't get me wrong, they're very good, but they have to be used in the correct setting. Those grow lights, the big ones, they produce a tremendous amount of light. So they're very suitable for grow tents or for places where your plants will be at a considerable distance from the grow light. And being that they are so powerful, they are suited for multiple plants actually. So for 2 Phalaenopsis orchids, one of those big things that are like 100 euros or something is not necessary, absolutely. And especially if you put that grow light really close to it. The more LEDs a grow light has, the hotter it will get. So if you go with the plants, orchids in this case, very close to it, you're gonna burn them due to that sheer heat that it radiates. So you said that you had it at 100%, but you can dim it to 25%. So I'm not sure what type of light you have. I'm not sure if it's one of those like with the handles. Grow lights are just so different between them. The quality of them varies greatly as well. I cannot really say exactly what happened there, but it sounds like some sort of heat stress. So if you can dim the light to 25%, absolutely do that. Also, if you can mount it higher up the orchid, that'd be great. Phalaenopsis orchids are not highlight orchids. They don't require a tremendous amount of light. They do require light, so if you keep them in absolute shade, yes, they will not do good, but they don't need all that much light. So first off, yes, put it at a higher distance and dim it as much as possible. And if it's one of those very big, like Mars Hydro or however they're called, those lights, it's an overkill. You can absolutely use it, but put it at a meter height from your orchid. You can even put other plants there because it will absolutely be good for multiple plants. Dim it as much as possible. If you feel like at that point it's too dim, crank it up to 50% maybe. But yeah, at this point, should you concentrate on growth or flower spikes? Well, depends. Inducing flower spikes means that you have to provide your orchids, your Phalaenopsis orchids, a cool down. And at this point, really honestly, if you want to induce a flower spike, you can absolutely do so. Roots are more important than a scorched leaf at this point. If you want to induce some flower spikes, you can absolutely do so. It's winter. The cold outside should help you out. It's up to you. Or if you want to keep them warm and just focus on growth because you had some leaf loss, you can absolutely do that. It really is up to you. Flowers are not necessarily your main concern now. The health of the orchid is, but if it's just one leaf that it's a little scorchy, it's fine. The orchid will be just fine, especially if it has 4 or 5 more leaves. It's gonna be fine. And yeah, just be careful with grow lights. I will make a orchid care for beginner video on light in general. Grow lights are great, and you guys know I depend a lot on grow lights. For my shelves, I use the tubes. Now I have the rePotme ones to try out and see how to, or give you hints on how to better utilize them. They are not very strong. They're suited for one orchid, Phalaenopsis. You can even adjust the height. They're suited for one orchid or maybe 2 orchids. They are what you need if you have 1, 2 orchids, but not the big one. You don't need those very, very big grow lights that you might have seen many YouTubers have been sponsored in the past, which is great. I'm absolutely pro YouTubers getting sponsored, but you have to know the application. For just a few orchids in your home, you don't need those grow lights. You have to be very careful because even if they're LEDs, they can still do some damage if they're used incorrectly. So I'm gonna do a beginner's video more in depth on light soon. Okay, next question. Julie Hudgens says, "Hi Danny, I managed to break a tender new flower spike." It's the bane of my existence. On one of my Phalaenopsis right at the node. Can a new spike form from a partial node? Depends. It can, absolutely. Depends how affected that node is. You might be in luck to not have the complete node being damaged. But even if it is damaged, don't worry. A new spike will most likely shoot or sprout from below that node, from the next node. From the next available healthy node, your orchid will produce most likely a secondary spike, particularly if the temperatures are low. That's what they do right now. They're not focusing on vegetative growth. So just so you feel better, I cannot tell you how many flower spikes I snapped and broke, and let's not even go there. It's a little heartbreaking because we were waiting a year for them. But don't worry, typically secondary spikes will sprout right back. And this question was left a month ago, so I'm sure you already have some secondary spikes. Right, so next question from Tapas Ray. How to differentiate between keikis and secondary spikes in early stages? Well, it's actually pretty easy. A keiki will start out with the leaves or the leaflets. From that node, you can get a sort of a a very rounded, let's say, type of growth. If that's the case, if you cannot see any leaflets differentiating, you just see kind of an elongated, rounded thing growing, that's usually a secondary spike. But if you see like pointy bits that look like tiny little leaves, that is most likely a keiki. Now, these are not written in stone. Your orchid can decide at the last second to be like, oh, no keiki, I'm gonna just shoot a flower spike from the middle of those two leaves because it wants to. Or you can have a tiny little secondary spike, but then at the end, you can have the leaves and it will be a keiki. So we're talking about general terms, but orchids will always surprise you. And that's how you can differentiate. I'll try to show you on my orchids, although it's not really the season, but I'll try to show you at least secondary spikes, how they look like. I don't know if I have a keiki sprouting at the moment because it's rather cool, but I'll show you at least how a secondary spike looks like. Next question, do orchids do well in terrariums? I have a 55-gallon fish tank. I could place a few to keep in humidity and water less. Currently living in a desert. Yes, absolutely. Orchids can do very well in terrariums. I will say though that there are more suitable orchids than others. For example, any Nicosia, perfect in terrariums. In 100% humidity, you will not have much rotting issues with those orchids. So it depends how you want to set up your terrarium. But if we're talking about Phalaenopsis and Cattleyas and stuff, these orchids don't really care much about humidity. So if you are concerned that you have very dry air for Cattleyas, Dendrobiums, and Phalaenopsis, don't worry anymore. Don't even lose sleep about it anymore. They do not care one bit, especially Cattleyas, one bit. And especially Phalaenopsis as well. No, do not even think about humidity. But if you want to try out something more like bulbophyllums, let's say, some bulbophyllums, Ladicias, if you say you live in a desert, I would not recommend like Masdevallias because you'll have a temperature concern as well. But yeah, if you just want to try it out, absolutely they can do well. But I would keep in mind the humidity aspect and how much water you leave in the crowns of the Phalaenopsis and in the Cattleya neogrows and stuff. They don't actually like that much humidity, to be fully frank with you. Or should I say, not that they don't like it, they do enjoy it, but it's a very thin line to walk between having standing water in their crowns, pooling and getting bacteria and other stuff and causing rot, and having humidity without pulling water. You know, so if you plan to use them like that, make sure that you position at least the Phalaenopsis leaning how they would naturally grow, because they grow like that for a reason. We plant them upright because we like them like that. That's not how they grow. So yeah, if you're just concerned about humidity, don't be. But if you want to try out more humidity loving plants, absolutely they love terrariums, as long as you have some ventilation there. Next question from Taylor. How do you determine if a recovering Phalaenopsis orchid is strong enough to bloom again? Last year I bought an orchid with no roots that I nursed back to health. It has healthy roots again and put out 2 leaves, smaller than the original 2 leaves, but healthy leaves. It has a new flower spike developing from the base, but I worry it isn't strong enough yet to be left to bloom. How do you know when an orchid is strong enough to be left alone to bloom, and when should you remove blooming spikes to prevent energy waste? Edit 2. It still has 2 of its original leaves left. Great question. So I would say that if the root system is in tip-top condition, no worries. No worries about the leaves. So even though Phalaenopsis, especially the hybrids at the flower shop, they sometimes don't know what they're doing because they're just so hybridized, their genes are all mixed up, there is one thing nobody can deny, and that is energy expenditure. So in your instance, if you have a very good root system, that's great. It means your orchid will get properly hydrated. And that's the #1 rule when we're talking about flower spikes. Except for the food aspect, flower spikes require a lot of water. If your orchid cannot support them water-wise, then I typically like to cut them because other stuff can happen like dehydration, that's bad. But if the orchid simply doesn't have enough leaves but it has a good root system, that's fine. I know the flower spike will not be the best, but that's okay. I still want to see a few flowers. So I would say let it bloom and enjoy the flowers. If you see dehydration signs, cut those blooms. Absolutely fine. I bet you that your orchid will not put on the most amazing show of life, but that's okay. It will just reward you for the great care you provided, and rest assured next year will be a lot better. So very happy to hear that you nursed your orchid back to health and just enjoy the blooms. This has been posted a month ago, so let me know how it goes now. How is your orchid now? Right. Next question from Little Bean. Have you ever pollinated 2 different Phalaenopsis orchids with one another? Like, let's say you had a white one and a purple one, and you take pollen from the purple one and you put it in the white one. What could happen? And I personally would really love to be able, for example, to make a hybrid this way, but I don't think it's possible. I don't know. So I'm curious to what you have to say about this. Well, yes, chances are if you pollinate 2 different looking like Phalaenopsis, your hybrids will be a combination of those 2. Usually when you get seeds, they will not look the same. Each seedling will be a little different. Some will be more purple, some will be more white, some a combination. You never know what you're gonna get. That's all great and beautiful. The problem comes with germinating the seeds. It's not something we typically do, especially in home conditions, because germinating orchid seeds is not easy for home growers. It became more easier, let's say, in recent years. I personally still don't want to hassle yet. But you would need a special growing medium made out of an agar and gelatin mix. You would need sterile conditions. When I say sterile, I don't mean clean. I mean sterile. Absolutely sterile. So some people have a laminar flow machine. Some people just do everything under a container, like a crate, and just spray alcohol like there's no tomorrow in there. Anyway, if you Google a little bit, you might find some articles or videos about it. It's not the easiest thing, but it's absolutely doable. And I do believe there are some people who did it. So if you feel up to it, why not? Try to hybridize your orchids. Most likely they're not sterile. Most likely they will take. And yes, the seedlings, if you have the patience again to wait for a few years for them to bloom, the seedlings should be a combination of the 2, or sometimes you will have the surprise of actually them showing recessive genes that they might have from their ancestors, because these orchids that we find in flower shops, they're complex hybrids as well. So they have some hidden genes sometimes. It's really fun, and I wish the process was simpler because I would do it, but I'm not feeling up to hassling with growing the seeds. That's all there is to it. But if you're really passionate about it, do it. Absolutely. Right. Next question from Laura. Danny, I have a phal with a keiki that also has one bud. It's growing on the node on the keiki. I have never seen this. They can do that actually. They came together same time. Please help. What should I do? The keiki has one root growing. The mother plant looks fine. Well, just let it be. At some point the flower will bloom, probably, or not. And if it does bloom, it will fade, and then you will be left with the keiki with one root. The keiki can stay there on the plant indefinitely. I would remove it when it has a few good roots, just because it will not look very sightly and the mother plant will have to sustain it. At some point, kids need to leave the parents, you know. If your mother plant looks good and it's not dehydrated, just enjoy the process. They do sometimes do that. As I was saying, from a node, all sorts of things can sprout. Not money, sadly, but either a secondary spike. I haven't talked in a million years. Either, you know, a keiki, who knows. Right, the last question for today, and we're gonna pick it up next month, is from Dean. Hi Danny, I've got a question on terracotta pots. I have moved all of my orchids to them. The plastic was causing issues in my area. We are 50 to 70% humid, wow, on a daily basis, and temperatures range from 15 to 29 Celsius. Beautiful weather, and that says like it stays like that throughout winters, with occasional 8 or 9 degrees in winter. My problem is where the plastic was causing mold issues, and I have to water almost daily. Oh no. And I have a ton of roses as well. Oh my goodness. Oh, so happy for you, but not happy that you're struggling. We're gonna fix it. So my time is getting hectic. I can imagine. What mix would you recommend I use in terracotta? I have Tillumia, Dendrobium, Phalaenopsis, Cymbidium, Ringcatleantha, etc. Please also note I'm a rose mom and new to orchids. Your tutorials are amazing and have helped so much. Oh my goodness, I'm so happy. I'm becoming a rose person as well. I've always been a rose person, just never had the opportunity. But anyway, right. Okay, what is the medium you're using now? Because I have the impression it's not very water retentive. I would go, if you feel up to it, I would go to full sphagnum moss. Why not? Make sure it's fluffy and not compacted. But I too have some issues with moisture, even if I use plastic. So even in plastic with no additional aeration holes, I used full sphagnum moss. And I would still use it if it wasn't so hard and expensive to find. Anyway, you can go full sphagnum moss. And if you have like algae on the top, just put a layer of bark or whatever, some rocks, whatever you like, that doesn't stay wet. Only if you have issues. If not, full sphagnum moss. I would go full sphagnum moss, to be fully honest. If you're a little concerned about using full sphagnum moss, or you just want to be more economical, mix it with a little bit of bark. But yeah, use that sphagnum moss like there's no tomorrow. I think it's gonna do great as long as you make it fluffy. Do not compact, and also buy good quality sphagnum moss. rePotme does have really good sphagnum moss. What you're looking for is New Zealand sphagnum moss. That's the one that I personally had the best results with. I tried in the past Chili moss, but it wasn't that great. Whatever you do, don't get the small little cubes of sphagnum moss from Amazon. Not even some reptile intended sphagnum moss is okay. Just New Zealand sphagnum moss is the best one that I can recommend. That's the one or the type that I use as well. But yeah, I think you'll be a little happier with sphagnum moss. And if that doesn't work, because it might not work, try plastic pots, but with a lot of ventilation holes or slits. And if they don't have enough slits or anything, just poke them in with a soldering iron. Just make extra ventilation. What do you have to lose, right? Try it with an orchid, with a Phalaenopsis, one that maybe you don't care so much about, and see how everything goes. Right, so for today, that is it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you've enjoyed this little Q&A. And again, if you have questions, leave them in the comment section of these videos and I'll try to get to them as soon as possible. I promise I'm trying to make this fast, so I go through many questions, but I don't like to give like one sentence answers. That's why I prefer to do these videos as well, because I want to elaborate. It is just how I operate. I don't feel right if I leave a person with like a little bit of an answer but not a complete answer. Anyway, don't worry, I'm gonna get to as many questions as I can next month. Right, so that's it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you've enjoyed today's Q&A session. Thank you rePotme so much for sponsoring this video. And with that said, I'll see you all next time. Bye!